In the early hours of March 8, 2014, the world witnessed one of the greatest mysteries in modern aviation history. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, a Boeing 777 carrying 239 souls, vanished into the night sky without a trace. No distress signal, no emergency beacon, just silence. What began as an ordinary red-eye flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing would soon become a haunting riddle that would captivate, torment, and confuse millions around the globe. It was just past midnight when the passengers of MH370 settled into their seats. Some were business travelers, others families, students, honeymooners, ordinary people on an ordinary night. The flight crew, while veteran Captain Zahri Ahmad Shah and his co-pilot, Farrokh Abdul Hamida, performed their final checks. The engines roared to life, the plane glided down the runway and disappeared into the humid Malaysian darkness. At 12:42 a.m., Flight MH370 lifted off the tarmac. Its destination, Beijing Capital International Airport. Expected flight time, 6 hours. Weather conditions, clear. Nothing unusual. In the control tower, voices exchanged calm, routine words. "Good night, Malaysian 370. It was the last message ever heard from the plane. Minutes later, radar screens showed MH370 climbing steadily over the South China Sea. Then, at 1:21 a.m., the aircraft's transponder upped its digital heartbeat. It went dark. Air traffic controllers lost all contact. In an instant, the radar blip that marked the plane's presence vanished. No one realized it yet, but MH370 was gone. The next morning, families gathered at Beijing Airport, waiting for loved ones who would never arrive. Screens still displayed delayed. Confusion turned to anxiety, anxiety to fear. Somewhere between Kuala Lumpur and Beijing, a massive aircraft had disappeared into thin air. Search teams were mobilized immediately. The South China Sea was scanned by ships and aircraft, but as hours turned into days, no wreckage was found. No oil slick. Nothing. Governments from more than a dozen nations joined the hunt. Australia, China, Vietnam, the United States. They scoured thousands of square kilometers of ocean. Satellite data, sonar mapping, flight path projections all turned up blank. It was as if the Boeing 777 had slipped into another world. And then, the story grew stranger. Military radar data, reviewed days later, revealed something astonishing. After losing contact, MH370 had not gone down in the South China Sea. Instead, it had turned sharply west, crossing the Malaysian peninsula. The aircraft had flown for nearly 7 more hours, silent, invisible to civilian radar, heading toward the vast emptiness of the southern Indian Ocean. Experts were baffled. Why had the plane changed course? Who was flying it? Was it a deliberate act, a hijacking, or a catastrophic system failure that somehow left the aircraft ghosting through the night? The questions multiplied as quickly as the theories. Satellite communications, the so-called handshakes between the aircraft and a satellite owned by Inmarsat, suggested a final arc of flight deep into the southern Indian Ocean, one of the most remote places on Earth. This discovery shifted the entire search thousands of miles southwest, but by then, days had passed. The ocean had swallowed whatever traces might have remained. In Kuala Lumpur, the families of the passengers demanded answers. They crowded into briefing rooms, clinging to hope. Some believed their loved ones might still be alive, held hostage somewhere. Others were tormented by uncertainty, caught in the unbearable space between belief and grief. Each night, they went home to unanswered phones, unreturned messages, empty chairs at dinner tables. Meanwhile, investigators dug into every aspect of the flight. The cargo hold, the manifest, the crew. Captain Zahri, a seasoned pilot with 18,000 flight hours, came under scrutiny. Was he responsible? Rumors swirled about his mental state, about political motives, about a meticulously planned suicide mission. But evidence remained inconclusive. His family insisted he was devoted, professional, and incapable of such an act. Still, doubts lingered. The co-pilot, Farrokh, was just 27, ambitious, newly certified on the Boeing 777. Could inexperience have played a role, or had something mechanical gone catastrophically wrong? Then came whispers of hijacking. Could passengers or stowaways have seized control? But the plane's complete disappearance, with no claims of responsibility, seemed to contradict that. What about an onboard fire, a rapid decompression, or a massive power failure? Each theory fit some facts, but not all. Weeks turned into months. The world's attention began to drift, but for the families, time stood still. The ocean is vast, merciless, and silent. And yet, somewhere beneath those endless waves, they believed, lay the truth. In 2015, a breakthrough cameo, or so it seemed, a piece of wing, known as a flaperon, washed ashore on Oratile Copyright Union Island, off the coast of Africa, thousands of miles from where MH370 was last tracked. It was confirmed to be from the missing aircraft. For the first time, the world had physical proof that MH370 had indeed ended its journey in the Indian Ocean. But even this discovery only deepened the mystery. How could a modern airliner simply vanish, leaving behind only a handful of scattered fragments? As more debris washed up on the shores of Mozambique, Tanzania, and Madagascar, investigators tried to piece together the puzzle. But every clue seemed to raise more questions. The black boxes of those vital flight recorders that could reveal what happened in the final moments remain lost, likely buried under miles of ocean floor. The official search, led by Australia, became one of the most expensive and extensive in aviation history. Over 120,000 square kilometers of seabed were mapped and scanned. The technology used was state-of-the-art sonar, deep-sea drones, underwater cameras. But the result was heartbreakingly consistent: nothing. In January 2017, nearly 3 years after the disappearance, the official search was suspended. Governments cited cost, probability, and lack of new leads. The families were devastated. To them, stopping the search felt like abandoning their loved ones a second time. Yet the story refused to end there. In 2018, a private company, Ocean Infinity, undertook a new search using advanced underwater drones capable of scanning huge areas at high speed. Hopes flared again. But after months at sea, even that effort came up empty. The silence of the Indian Ocean remained unbroken. For aviation experts, MH370 became both an obsession and a warning. How could one of the safest, most trackable aircraft ever built disappear without a trace in the digital age? The tragedy exposed gaps in global tracking systems, communication protocols, and international coordination. It forced governments to rethink how we monitor aircraft in flight, especially over oceans. But for the public, MH370 became something else: a ghost story, a haunting reminder of how fragile certainty can be. Internet forums buzzed with theories. Was the plane hijacked by rogue agents, shot down accidentally, landed secretly on a remote island, or could it have been swallowed by a catastrophic event no one had foreseen? The most credible theory, based on satellite data and flight simulations, suggests a controlled descent into the ocean, possibly after the crew and passengers were incapacitated by hypoxia, a lack of oxygen. But even that leaves a chilling question: who was flying the plane at the end, and why? Years have passed, and still, the ocean keeps its secret. The waves that may hold the truth roll endlessly, indifferent to human grief. Families have learned to live with questions instead of answers. Memorials have been built, tributes paid, but closure remains elusive. Every March 8th, candles flicker in windows across Malaysia, China, and beyond. Names are read aloud, photographs held close. For those left behind, time has not dulled the pain. We just want to bring them home, one mother says, her voice trembling, as tears trace lines down her face. Even if it's only pieces, the disappearance of MH370 is not merely a story of technology or failure. It's a story about human longing for answers, for truth, for connection in an age where even the skies seem mapped and mastered. Yet on that night, something slipped through our fingers, reminding us that mystery still exists. Investigators continue to revisit old data. New satellite analysis, ocean drift studies, and acoustic signals from the deep have all been examined. Each new report sparks fresh hope and renewed heartbreak. Still, the most important evidence, the flight recorders, remain buried somewhere beyond reach. Some scientists believe they know roughly where MH370 lies, on a ridge in the southern Indian Ocean. But without funding and political will, the search remains dormant. For now, the ocean floor keeps its silence. And yet, the world has not forgotten. Documentaries, books, and countless online discussions continue to explore the case. Pilots train differently now. Radar systems have been upgraded. International protocols have changed. In that sense, the passengers of MH370 have left a legacy of unwritten and policy and progress, even if their final story is still untold. The sky, they say, is vast but knowable. Flight paths are precise, monitored, and recorded. But MH370 defied that certainty. Somewhere between Kuala Lumpur and the southern reaches of the world, the sky went silent. Perhaps the final moments were peaceful, of passengers asleep, unaware. Perhaps they were chaotic, filled with alarms and fading oxygen. We may never know. The black boxes, if found, might someday tell us what truly happened. But for now, MH370 remains a whisper across the sea, a question suspended in time. When the sky went silent, the world was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Even in an era of satellites and data, we are still capable of losing something, a summonia without explanation. And so the waves continue to roll. The currents shift. Somewhere out there, deep beneath miles of water, the remains of MH370 rest in darkness. Time passes above, the world moves on, but down there, silence reigns eternal. Every once in a while, debris still washes ashore, small, weathered fragments that have traveled thousands of miles. Each piece tells a story of distance, of loss, of an unfinished journey. Each discovery reopens wounds, reminding the world that the mystery is not solved, only paused. For the families, there is no closure, only endurance. They hold on to memories of the last phone calls, the smiles at the airport, the sound of a loved one's laugh. They imagine the moment the plane vanished, trying to find peace in the unknowable. 9 years have passed. The world has changed. New technologies promise better tracking, stronger communication, and safer skies. But the ghost of MH370 lingers, set a shadow across the clouds. And maybe, in some way, that's fitting. Because the disappearance of flight MH370 isn't just a mystery to be solved, it's a mirror held up to humanity itself. It reveals our dependence on technology, our hunger for answers, and our profound discomfort with uncertainty. There is something hauntingly poetic about it, a plane soaring through the night, filled with life, vanishing into the void. The sky, once filled with sound, goes silent. Someday, perhaps, the silence will break. Perhaps sonar pings will echo off a hidden wreckage, and the truth will finally rise from the deep. Until then, MH370 remains both a tragedy and a symbol, a reminder that even in an age of light, darkness still exists. And so, the story ends where it began, in the night sky over the South China Sea. The engines hum, the cabin lights glow, and somewhere, between takeoff and arrival, the world loses track of itself. When the sky went silent, it wasn't just a plane that disappeared, it was our certainty, our sense of control, our belief that we can always find what's lost. 239 souls. One plane. One mystery. And a silence that has echoed for more than a decade. The screen fades to black. The sound of waves. A single voice whispers, "Good night, Malaysian 370."